Attorney Gilead Sher is a senior researcher in the institute. He was a previous brigade commander in the IDF and served under Ehud Barak, a enthusiastic supporter of separation between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and he's going to shed light on a different perspective of the situation. The mic is yours, sir. Hello to everybody. With all of the attempts of President Trump to show the deal of the century as if it was original and pioneering, we're really talking about Oslo Take 3, meaning a plan that is based on outlines that were made in years past by Clinton and Bush Jr., lots of similarities to Oslo 1 and then Oslo 2, and to the Clinton outline and to the Bush outline. There's a clear line that correlates between all of these previous plans and the one proposed and the autonomy plan by Carter and Begin in the framework for peace between Israel and Egypt, and to the various versions of the Oslo Agreement. President Trump basically hasn't invented anything new. What has he done? He's changed completely all of the internal balances and based it very clearly, the American proposal, and very obviously for the Israelis' interest at the expense of the Palestinians. In addition, he has completely done a unilateral move. So Oslo number 3 is like an American-Israeli deal. A deal where the word peace at this stage at least is a bit of a big word to use. Is this going to be a policy where anybody in the White House later on is going to accept? Let's leave that as an open question. Yet, with everything I've said, we should congratulate and say for this plan and turn it into an anchor at least, or a point or a beginning point for this negotiation. But you cannot at least ignore the reality as it is, and I think it will bring, further the acknowledgement of the Palestinians that time is not on their side. On that one point, I do agree with Gideon Sa'ar. The classic reluctance of the Palestinians to move forward in the last 30 years, the days of rage, the civilian protests, the violent protests, none of these things, at least this time, will produce Arab solidarity as it was in the past, because reality has changed. The reality in the Middle East has changed. The Saudis, Qatar, they're for the program. The Egyptians aren't saying anything. Let's see what happens. Time will tell. In any case, the government of Israel has to take the opportunity of this plan and use it to push forward and create and support two separate entities here, while maintaining the conditions for any possible agreement that it may be made. And the Israeli government has to do so while taking independent steps that are not harmful for any negotiation, and it's only based on us and our initiatives as Israeli to push forward for a different reality. We have to talk to the Palestinian leadership, we have to talk to the Jordanians, we have to talk to the Egyptians, and we also have to talk with the Sunni powers, and also talk to ourselves a lot. But when one talks about the future of Judea and Samaria and the decision that must be made over these territories, it's a decision over the borders of Israel. And I think that no one would argue with me that this is one of the biggest, most important decisions that we have to make as a country since our establishment. What borders can we set in which we put forth and support the values of our independence? When we announced our independence, do we give up or cede territories? Do we annex territories? What are the repercussions of this? What are the repercussions of that? And so this, this sprint ahead to automatic annexation, that's not going to be useful. And certainly not for an interim government, a second one in a row. Certainly not one that's leaded by a person that's now being indicted for very serious charges. They were submitted in the Tel Aviv district court yesterday. So for this, we need restraint from our government of the first order. Restraint. The Trump proposal, Oslo number 3, is I mean, something that we see as well, because the Israelis have accepted it full-hearted immediately with enthusiasm, and the Palestinians immediately rejected it. Now, even if the Palestinians reject it as they have everything in the past, the clauses within that plan still ostensibly allow for an Israeli-American independent action to implement some of it. So the demands and the threshold requirements that are specified in the plan, they're also not new as an American stance, disarming the Palestinians, no to terrorism, the authorization of a single authority in the West Bank and and in Gaza, and of course stopping the construction in the Jewish settlements. And the choice before Israel today is a separating from the Palestinians to a two-state solution to maintain Israel as a Jewish democracy versus annexation and deleting or erasing the future border, and that will basically bring the end of the Zionist endeavor. And from then till today, actually, the radicals were always in the lead, the radicals of both sides, not the moderates. Now, the Trump administration, seemingly, or officially at least, is sticking to the two-state solution and ostensibly sticking to the policies of presidents of the United States in the last few decades, which are based on the most part for 334 and other National Security Council resolutions. But the Zionist vision has been frayed, and the distinction that was accepted by all previous American administrations between the big blocks of Jewish settlements, those that are next to the 1967 borders, next to Jerusalem, versus those Jewish settlements that are deep into Palestinian territories. Well, President Trump turns his back on the resolution that makes that distinction, and he says that no Jewish settlement will be uprooted. So this is a recognition of the Americans of Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley, which is supposed to be implemented, ostensibly at least, immediately. This is built into the program. Everything else, all other parts of the plan, are to be implemented at some later date. This is why the amount of territories allotted to the Palestinians, which is from 70% of the West Bank and Judea and Samaria. Is this a viable country that's to be established according to the map? Probably not. The Jewish enclaves are completely disconnected from each other. But apparently you can start future negotiations on the basis of this plan as well. Can we propose a different plan, a better plan to the Palestinians? I don't know if there's any guarantee for that, but there's also one other factor that was kind of mentioned on the sideline, and that is part of the plan, and that is the exchange of populated territories, meaning in the agreement of exchanged territories, there are territories that are populated that will be exchanged between the two factors. Now, apart from the enthusiasm from annexing land in Judea and Samaria that I can understand emotionally, what's the real significance is this? Well, the real significance is a great divergence from the idea of the State of Israel with clear and legitimate national borders. This kind of act will also harm our very important peace with Jordan, with Egypt, will cause terrorism and escalation of violence and political protests, and of course the military coordination with the Palestinian Authority. President Trump also bases it on models that are, from previous American administration plans, but are for our benefit. For example, Jerusalem and the holy sites, that's one of the biggest and harshest issue. The plan proposes two options within the Jerusalem area. One, that Jerusalem is ours along with the old city, and the second is Al-Quds, meaning a smaller parts in Abu Dis or other Arab neighborhoods, but have no part of the old city, but do have access to the holy sites. Well, I imagine that this will continue to be a powder keg issue in the future. Maybe paradoxically, this Jerusalem will be the one thing that bring about or advance the actions within the Palestinian camp to get to some kind of resolution. In any case, President Trump gave it a 4-year basis for negotiations. In his opinion, that is realistic, maybe a lot more realistic than proposed by previous presidents that proposed 8 months or a year. This is and Clinton and President Bush, President Obama later on, shorter periods of time. Now we're moving on to security, without which no agreement would be possible. Well, just like everybody in the room here, I am concerned, worried about the future of the state of Israel and its security, that Israel maintain its Jewish democratic status. The vast majority of the people in the law enforcement powers in Israel understand this, and understand this very simply, that the Jewish settlements are not good for Israeli security. They're an enormous burden. They just create more escalation and extremism among the terrorist organization actions taken against us, and the amount of investment in Judea and Samaria are completely disproportional than what we're investing in other fronts. And the price that we're all paying, every single citizen of the state of Israel, is that the army trains less, is less prepared for a multi-front battle, and also our security demands of Israel throughout the years that the Jordan Valley become a security boundary area for Israel, and Israel still hasn't imposed Israeli sovereignty there, because in any case, any future agreement, any possible outline that we come to, the one thing that should be at the head of our priority list is security, and not the location of this or that town or city. Finally, okay, so in terms of exchange, we in the Institute are examining the territorial exchange issue from many aspects. And if we want to live peacefully within our democratic state, in our Jewish democratic state, we believe that Israel should slowly and gradually separate from the Palestinians, to have two nation states with a barrier between them. We have already come out with a outline. You can see it in the materials presented outside. So the solution, and this is my conclusion, I don't think it'll be exactly according to this particular plan or that particular plan. I believe that when we get to a solution, it will be a state solution between the two sides, in which we examine the interim solutions and a gradual shift is made between one phase to the next, so that we can finally move in the right direction. It's not something that'll happen in all one go. We have to, on the one hand, be excited about the possibilities, and on the other hand, everybody's so concerned about the risks. But I believe and I hope very much that we will be wise enough to navigate through this very complex reality, and not lose either our compass or our conscience along the way. Thank you very much.
We really, really tried to bring a Palestinian who would comment on this program. We had some advanced negotiations, but ultimately they all got cold feet and remained in Ramallah. So we're not going to put a kafia on Assaf, but Assaf is one of the senior scholars in the institute, and I had asked him is it good for us or not? Well, in one word, it's good. In two words, not good, because we heard a new reference framework. All in all, the conditions for Israel are pretty good with respect to the core issues such as borders, refugees, and security. Gideon Sa'ar also said that time works, against the Palestinians. And of course, there's an erosion in their views on the core issues. But the big question when we come to discuss this deal or this proposal, the question is, what is your judgment based on? Where do we want to reach? And I think that the two speakers that had talked here, they talked about two ultimate goals that were different. Two countries that they want to see it, and that were very different. Because are we talking about one country, because there's no room for two countries here between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, or two countries? Are we talking about a negotiated agreement, or an arrangement that is forced upon one party? So there's no doubt that the new framework and the new parameters are a better starting point for an Israeli bargaining position in an agreement. But it's important to remember that, just like Gideon Sa'ar said, it doesn't really matter what your starting point is for the Palestinians. They always start and finish at the same point. And there's something else that's important to say. The way in which the plan was presented, the chances that a negotiating group will convene under this umbrella is a bit problematic. So we have a big party, we have a groom, we have a rabbi, but the bride doesn't really want to join, and yet we are insisting on a wedding. The next thing, and it's been said here that the U.S. supports. Well, I think we should say humbly that the U.S. is not at its peak point of national unity. So we do have the support of a White House, which, is a government of a very rifted and polarized American public. So for some Americans, the mere fact that this came from the current White House, it is not something that they support. And we need to see who truly supports this in the U.S., how sustainable it is, who else supports this in the world. And the U.S., its support of Israel in this respect is like a rope. It can veto, that means it can pull, but it cannot rally many supporters for it from the world. Not even in the Arab world. We see a lot of polite answers, but the people who read these sentences can see that these are not supportive comments, but polite comments. They praise them for the effort, not so much for the outcome. And I think that this is a situation that we are congratulating them for recognizing their right. And just like this song goes, so I sold him a house that wasn't mine because I didn't want him to leave with a positive attitude, with a negative attitude. And one last thing that I'd like to say, and that's from a security perspective. This is a very surprising measure. There's high probability that since this was a secret program, the Israeli security establishment, last night was the first time they heard the details of this plan. From my acquaintance with the security establishment and how it approaches things professionally, it needs time to think about things. And one of the things it'll have to think about immediately is the security responses. And we read yesterday in the newspaper that the Jordan Valley Division has been enhanced, and there are certain thoughts, at least in the general staff, that there could be some immediate, not so positive security developments here. Another issue for the security arrangements, we are hearing about towns and villages within Palestinian territory over time, enclaves that will have to see how to protect them, and that's not so easy, even if we are constantly there. But there's even something newer there. For the first time, we're hearing about Palestinian enclaves along the Palestinian border, close to the border. These are not the basic principles of the security doctrine that we want depth, and we don't want to have like Gaza 3 times over along the Egyptian border. I have a feeling that we haven't finished processing the ramifications and implications simply because we didn't have enough time. So there are some surprising elements, and it's definitely a political diplomatic bomb that was thrown. And when you organize these kind of surprises, it often happens that you also surprise yourself. And with all the tremendous enthusiasm that we just heard from Gideon Sa'ar, that this is an opportunity to take some rash measures, etc., it's important to remember that quick rash measures have quick implications, and surprising measures have surprising ramifications. And I think that as we consider applying sovereignty or annexation or other such options, we need to devote a lot of thought and to understand all the implications. And if we wish to be completely balanced, as we rejoice over the recognition of our rights over major parts of Judea and Samaria, I don't remember any serious discussion being held regarding withdrawal from significant portions of the Negev. As we remember, Ben Gurion placed the Negev as where the Jewish people in Israel will be tested, and I don't remember having examined what it will do to the strength of our peace relations with the main countries with which we have peace accords. So I suggest what I've always suggested: the major decisions about our lives and the life of this country, we need to take them slowly with a lot of thought put into them. Thank you. I'd like to thank Gidon Sar, who stated his position. He sincerely admitted that this is a two-state solution program, but he doesn't believe in a two-state solution. I'd like to thank Gilead, who analyzed this event from the perspective of those who want a two-state solution, who want the separation, and you understood why I said that Assaf is one of our more brilliant scholars. He presented the questions that come up and recommended to continue and work, and this is exactly what we're going to do with this program in order to equip those who are going to reach difficult decisions with the best strategic insights regarding the risks and opportunities that lie within this program. Thank you very much.